Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Jamie Finney from Aspiria Property. We're the appointed development manager across this project at lots 120 and 121 in the Murdoch Health and Knowledge Precinct. We've had a long and active involvement in this precinct. So we have been on the Murdoch Square development site from Development WA several years ago, and with the preferred proponent in the acquisition of the lots 120 and 121 site, and are also working with St John of God on the Orthanova site as well. So the Murdoch Activity Centre site is projected to be WA's largest healthcare and employment centre outside the Perth CBD, and will grow significantly upon the completion of Murdoch Square. The proposed development is in the background of this image at the intersection of Barry Marshall Parade and Fiona Wood Road. In the foreground is a recent drone photo of our Murdoch Square development, and behind that's a render of a recently JDAP approved Orthanova hospital. I was hoping this image gives the JDAP a sense of the sheer scale of this precinct, but also the importance of the proposed development, supplying much needed housing to service what is a really significant employment node for WA. Moving on to our Murdoch Square project. So we've now achieved practical completion across 4 of the 5 buildings. This is a large mixed-use project, WA's first Medi hotel with a bridge across into the hospital, Fiona Stanley, aged care, 150-key Courtyard by Marriott hotel, commercial tenancies, rooftop childcare, medical suites. It's been a very complex and rewarding project for our healthcare team, delivering 5 buildings for 2 different asset owners across separate green titles of the United, Podium and Car Park. The project was significantly more complex than what we're currently proposing for lots 120 and 121. We've learned a lot of lessons through that project, and we've removed a lot of that complexity as well. Moving on to the current project and what we're proposing. So this comprises 216 social and affordable housing dwellings for an estimated 400 plus new residents, with over 15,000 square metres of commercial tenancy space. Lot 121, which will be owned and operated by Foundation Housing, will be delivered as stage 1 of the project. The 216 dwellings proposed will be the first significant contribution to the Murdoch Activities residential target of 1,200 dwellings. There's 27 dwellings delivered in stage 1. Only 27 dwellings out of 1,200 have been delivered today. 30% or 65 of the dwellings are dedicated to social housing tenants, and the remaining 70%, 151 dwellings, are allocated for affordable housing. And Stuart from Foundation will touch on this in a bit more detail in his presentation. Lot 120, which will be owned and operated by the Aspiria Healthcare Fund, will be delivered as stage 2 at a later stage. It comprises 13,400 square metres of commercial office and healthcare related tenancies, plus an additional 850 square metres of ground floor, retail and commercial space. And across both of these sites will be 451 new car bays, and we're aiming for a 5-star Green Star rating across both projects as well. That's it for now.
That's your time, is it?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go to our second presenter. Jude Block, did I say?
Jude Block, that's right. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, morning everyone again, and morning everyone online. Stuart Jude Block, I'm the General Manager of Commercial Development at Foundation Housing. We're the largest community housing provider in Western Australia. We've got 2,000 properties that we either own or manage, and they're all full, and they're always full. There's a housing crisis on at the moment. I don't need to tell you that, but just to paint a picture of the order of magnitude, if you were to draw a line around Murdoch, about 8-kilometre radius, you'd have what's called the Fremantle catchment for the wait list. On that wait list today, I checked the figures before I came in, it's 3,259 households on that wait list waiting for accommodation, and they range from single households through to family-sized households. There are 1,178 single-person households on that list today, 1,178 looking for a 1-bed property for social housing. 327 2-person households looking for a 2-bed property. So there's about 1,500 people on the social housing wait list today looking for a 1 or 2 bedroom property. because of the way the rents are structured, they pay about 25% of their gross household income as their rental. Most of them are on pensions or in lowly paid jobs. Their sort of rents that they can afford to pay range between $300 and $600 per week. So they're very much at that entry level in the rental market. If they pay more than that, they're in rental stress. If you jump on realestate.com today and put in $300 to $600 a week in that Fremantle area, which aligns with the social housing wait list, you'll come up with about 42 properties. So there's 1,178 people looking for a one-bedder, 327 looking for a two-bedder. There's 3,259 in total, and in that price point that they can afford without being in rental stress, there are 42 properties. If you look at the other cohort that we're servicing, they can pay a little bit more because they have low to medium paying jobs. They're in the sort of 600 to 700 rental. If you look at that, if you go up the scale a bit, there's another 51 properties which are available for key workers. There would be many key workers out there looking for a rental which is at 75% of the market rate. So we're adding 65 social against a wait list of 3,259. We're adding 151 affordable, for which there is enormous demand because there's only about 100 properties available in the market today. So, I would implore you to take that into consideration when considering an approval today. If we can get this thing approved and get going, in 3 years' time, there will be 216 keys in locks and there will be 65 people coming off that wait list. And there will be medical and education precinct workers, about 151 of them living, working and playing right on their doorstep where they work. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now go to our next presenter, Mr. Darren Levy.
So Darren Levy, I'm from Newloff and Associates. I'm the traffic consultant on the project. My introduction to this project followed on from a previous DA for the site that's located just to the north. With that project, the traffic consultant had identified that further development in that little cell would add to the congestion that's already occurring down at the Murdoch Drive and Barry Marshall Parade intersection. Now, congestion's okay. This whole precinct has been planned for congestion as part of the push to get more and more people onto public transport. It's right next to the station, buses running through. So the whole area since its conception has always been based around that concept that it will be a congested traffic network. The road network has essentially been built out to its full development. Now we're coming through with all the development that actually occurs on the lots that were created. The change that occurred from that original planning was the Roe Highway decision, removal of Row 8, the new connection to Murdoch Drive. Now that's changed some of those traffic conditions that were originally planned. It's actually meant that the congestion at that Murdoch Drive intersection is higher than what it was originally intended. Now this little cell that we're looking at on Wannell Place was built and was deliberately built to not require a roundabout. The Wannell Place side of the intersection was limited to left turn out only, so that it could operate as an unsignalised intersection as it currently does. It's full movement access to the western side, where St John of God have access, but it's limited access to Wannell Place. You can turn left in and right in, but only a left turn out. Now that means that everybody exiting anything that's accessed solely by Wannell Place has to turn left onto Fiona Wood Road and therefore has to use Barry Marshall Parade if they want to get back out onto South Street and access the broader network. When we first got involved, we were basically asked, because of those problems, to explore other options. So the first option was the idea of a roundabout at Wannell Place. As I said, it wasn't part of the original planning and was specifically avoided in that planning. But we had a look at it, and basically, if you put a roundabout at that location, obviously entering a roundabout from any side, you're giving way to those already on the roundabout. So what it means is that queuing would happen at the roundabout for traffic coming in from the north, from South Street, would have to give way to any vehicles coming out of St John of God Hospital, for example, And there's potential for queuing back up into South Street. There's also potential for queuing the other way, back towards the south into the traffic signals at Fiona Wood Road. And then the development itself, adding on to Wannell Place, would add to that traffic and cause congestion down at there. So bottom line of that investigation we did was that a roundabout at that location is not recommended. It wasn't recommended originally, and we would recommend it now. The only option to add into that congestion that we talked about down at Barry Marshall was to actually look at this idea of access off Barry Marshall. Now, we've accepted and we've had discussions with the city and PTA that it's only a small benefit that is gained in that sense, but what it does is that it opens up all access routes. So traffic exiting this particular site onto Barry Marshall would travel to those traffic signals at Fiona Wood Road and be able to turn right to go north and get out onto South Street if they want to go west or continue up to the northwest. They would still have to go down Barry Marshall Parade if they wanted to come all the way back to the freeway. But it gives the extra options rather than forcing all the traffic down one specific route. So that was where we went in regards to this particular proposal. We worked along with the other consultants, the architect, about where that driveway should be placed, how it should be designed, what it would mean in regards to the short-term access. We didn't initially do detailed traffic modelling of that whole thing because, as I said at the start, the whole precinct was fully modelled and traffic modelling was done to death basically at the beginning, and the whole thing's been built out. However, in discussion with PTA and the city, we were specifically asked to do some SIDRA modelling for the traffic signal at Fiona Wood Road and this driveway that we're proposing. Concerns were raised about what was referred to as the pulsing of buses, where they leave the station, whole bunch of buses all leave at once after a train's come through. So we were given numbers in relation to that, and we were asked specifically to model for that criteria, which we did. We looked at a peak 5-minute period within the peak 15-minute period to be able to reflect those flows. And the analysis that we did in the addendum report that we prepared showed that those intersections would all operate safely at acceptable levels of service. With that in mind, however, it's also important to note that the trip generation that we used, we would consider to be a worst case scenario for that analysis. Obviously, we're proposing a development right next to the train station, right on a bus. We've talked about the fact that it's a mixed use precinct, there's work opportunities and everything else. So although there's parking base proposed, I think we heard 400 or something of that nature is the figure. There's obviously residential as well as office. My own experience, I live in the city in an apartment, I work in the city, I have 2 parking bays. I park 1 car there. I've used it once so far this week. I have a car, I need a car, but I don't use my car every day and I don't go out when the peaks are happening and that sort of thing. And that's the type of thing that happens when you're in an apartment in that sort of environment. So that's what I would expect to happen here. So the analysis we've done is probably too high for the types of trip generation that's actually going to occur. And even with those assumptions, we're still showing that it works and it works at an acceptable level of service.
You're going to need to slowly wrap up. You're at your
Cool, I'm just about there, so if that's okay. The other thing I just wanted to comment on was the safety side of it. It's important to understand that it's a driveway that's proposed, it's not a road. The footpath will have priority over it, which means pedestrians on the footpath will have priority over cars coming in and out the driveway. From the bus perspective, there were concerns about buses having to or being affected by cars turning in or out of the driveway. There's 2 lanes of traffic, so if cars are slowing to turn in, the bus has another lane to bypass to carry through. So we're convinced that it's safe, it's not going to have a negative impact on the buses, and hence we've recommended it. Thank you.
Thank you. Final presenter before going to panel is Sean Fairwell.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. We're fundamentally talking about one variation to the design guidelines that we have a difference of opinion about with the city about how it should be dealt with. And this is a slightly unusual situation. We're not seeking this variation on the basis that there will be a direct benefit to the development. There's no additional dwelling yield. There's no operational benefit. There's no, the development's not cheaper to build. We don't get any additional floor space. Conversely, it would have been easier the other way to lodge an application that was consistent with the guidelines. We've certainly found the assessment process to be more involved. And this is evidenced by the city's deferral recommendation. The reason we lodged as we did was on the basis of the traffic advice being consistent and clear that this is the best outcome for the overall precinct. There will be less traffic heading to Barry Marshall Drive, Murdoch Drive intersection. There will be less movement, there will be less impact on the movement of buses through the intersection of Fiona Wood Road and Barry Marshall Parade. Having gone through this process, I'm absolutely convinced that the proposed configuration is the right outcome in this instance. Firstly, I trust Darren Levy. He wouldn't recommend this if there was a better outcome. It's not unsafe. This portion of Barry Marshall Parade is not busy. There's a lot of buses, but the overall traffic is quite low. And secondly, I haven't heard identified as a fundamental flaw or a justifiable safety concern. It's important to note there's another crossover on Barry Marshall Parade about 300 metres to the west of this site. That crossover provides full access in and out for the St John of God Hospital car park. Neither the city or the PTA, importantly, identified any issues with the operation of that crossover. It's far more, it's busier than this, and it's a full access crossover. And there's significantly more traffic on that portion of Barry Marshall Parade than at this location. So the proposal, if approved today, and we do need to get an approval today, ideally to sort out or secure the funding from the federal government. This proposal will be an important component to the Murdoch Health Precinct, providing, as you've heard, social and affordable housing and more office floor space, a range of uses and arrangement of employment opportunities closer to where people live. It's an outcome that SPP 4.2 is striving for, and it's good planning. On that basis, we'd ask the panel to put aside the city's recommendation and endorse the alternative recommendation. We've had a look at the conditions, and the city were good enough to discuss the draft conditions or the alternative recommendation with us prior to lodging with the DAP Secretariat. Nothing in those draft conditions jumps out as being an issue for us at this point. We'll obviously continue to discuss the development with the city staff as we go through the detailed design, and if anything does jump out at that point, we'll either ask the city or the panel to reconsider on anything that becomes an issue. But on that basis, we have no concerns with the alternative recommendation, and we'd ask that the panel endorse that as the decision today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Panel members, we have questions for any members from the first four presenters. Are there any questions at this junction? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to a couple of the conditions, given the what we're aiming for here, and maybe it's from Mr. Duplot, the percent for public art. If it's one, I didn't see a figure, but if it's 1%, that's $1 million. What does that do to the cost of the housing that you're providing? Has that discussion been held at all with the?
It's just normal part of development that we would have to contribute to public art. We're happy to do that. I mean, it's important for the residents that they're in an area of high amenity. The overall budget for this project's north of 150 million. So with all costs included, so we're happy to make that contribution as part of social and affordable housing. I think it's important for amenity.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, if I may,
Yes.
Just in relation to the road safety audit, is that additional work, Mr. Levy, additional work to what you've already done?
Yes, it would be additional work. It's something that I don't believe is necessary. We're talking about crossover to a road. It will need to comply with all the relevant standards. But my understanding is that it's something that the City of Melville have started to implement on every development, regardless of whether it's justified or not. So I don't believe it's necessary. I think
You're comfortable it's not going to be fatal to
I'm comfortable it's not going to be fatal, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mr Levy, while you're still there now.
I might take a seat.
Take a seat. Barry Marshall Parade in that location is not a dedicated public transport route, it's a public road.
Look, at the moment, it's been built as a shared road, in that there's red pavement on the curbside lanes and there's normal black asphalt on the inside lanes. There are signs at the intersection at the moment saying buses or authorised vehicles or something of that nature only from the signals forward. In the structure plans, there's talk of the bus only section being further down Barry Marshall,
My
where
next
there's
question.
another road
That's
to
my
the
next
south.
question. Yeah,
Yes.
so what happens in stage 2 when what they're calling Murdoch Boulevard, I think, comes in there to the east of this development? Is it inevitable then that this part of Barry Marshall Parade becomes a normal public road?
That's my view of it, yes, and that's why it's been constructed the way it has with the different asphalt all ready to roll through.
I mean, 4 lanes is
There's 4 lanes
It's-
at this location.
it's a big bus lane.
Absolutely. And we've, in the addendum that we prepared, we've shown some layouts of how what exists now would vary moving
Yeah.
through to that scenario in our opinion.
Yeah, I think that's key. If it was a bus only road, it would be single carriageway. Yeah, single lane, single carriage.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we have another question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this question is probably for Sean. So you did mention that this could jeopardize, funding from the state government. Can you sort of like elaborate more on that? So let's say if we do defer it, what's the impact of that?
My understanding is there are, to commence construction, there are timeframes that we need to get funding secured, and part of that funding is federal funding.
Okay. And like delaying it would mean that the funding will go away, or?
Well, it potentially means we have to wait another year.
Okay.
Have you had those conversations with when you talk about potential, there's a potential for it not to go away. So I'm interested in knowing, following up on that question, to elaborate on that. What does that mean in terms of potential? It seems, I assumed that there was a reasonable certainty to funding, and I'm getting the sense from your comment that without an approval today, it's in significant jeopardy. But that does, I'd like some further information on that, because that's quite unusual for it to be without any further documentation that says it's go or bust completely.
No, it's
we don't
not,
have that sort of
it's not
documentation.
absolute, as far as I'm aware, but we're trying to fit in with the timeframes that we've got for this year and this round of funding.
So the funding is coming from state and federal governments. We're in advanced negotiations with the state. They want to fund shovel-ready projects, so they want projects with a development approval. The biggest issue is the federal government. They will announce their round 1 funding in August. They also want shovel-ready projects. We have no knowledge of a round 2 for their funding. So it could be up to a year before we can reapply for whatever round 2 funding looks like. So we have a very narrow window now for the next few months to take our approval to the state and federal authorities and lock away their funding. So it really is crunch time for this project.
Thank you. Is there any further questions you have?
I think that covers it pretty well. So like, from my understanding is you miss round 1, you sort of wait for round 1 in August, a break for round 2 in sometime in the future.
Yeah, that's when it will be.
Yeah, and you don't know where that will be. So potentially deferring it could potentially, mean that this project could be in jeopardy, right?
That's right, and we could also jeopardise the state funding piece, because they may not wish to wait around for another year. They might want to deploy their funds into another project which is shovel ready. So it's about getting all those ducks lined up now.
It's your elections the next year.
Yeah, it doesn't help. So, there's a critical sort of political window for us to push this through.
Yeah, and will you guys be shovel ready in August or like on the expected time?
Yeah, we will. If we have a development approval, at some point in the next couple of months, we'll roll into detailed design on this because we want to maintain program and deliver the housing, in under 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just on the economics of all this and looking at the broader picture, obviously a lot of money's been spent on getting this application here. It's taken since September last year, I think it was. So there's a lot of time been spent and so forth.
Yeah. So
the potential that all that money that could go to affect his public housing goes down the drain. That doesn't seem to be very efficient.
That is of concern. We've spent probably over 700,000-800,000 to date on the development. We have to significantly, we'd have to wear a lot of the water costs there. So that,
that's a lot 1 2 1 portion. There's an additional $500,000 on the lot 120 side. So there's an excess of $1 million on DA cost today.
Yeah. So, these houses are being delivered, or these dwellings, for about 700 a key. So, that's one less apartment. To put it in perspective, that's the order of magnitude. Yeah. So it's more about the time delay, though.
1 bedroom apartment, 700.
No, there's a blend. We've got a blend of 1s and 2s. We've got a supermarket in there as well, like the ground floor and other amenity. But yeah, it's an expensive building environment. That's the other issues. Costs are going up in construction at 5-6% per annum at the moment. So it'll never be cheaper to build than to let a contract today and get started. That's the other issue. The major quantity surveying firms for the next 4 years are predicting 5% per annum increases. So this project will be 5% more expensive in a year and 20% or 25% more expensive in 4 years. So it just is, it's always going up and up.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I was just signaling Anastasia has raised her hand up.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Is there someone you're expecting, Anastasia, from PTA?
No.
No? Okay.
Oh.
That's fine.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. It's mainly to Darren. My questions are all obviously traffic questions. I'd like you to talk through a bit further the traffic movements, the all-way traffic movements that are requested of the Barry Marshall Parade and the impact of those traffic movements. You've got a lot of information in your attachments in terms of the intersection and the signalling at the intersection. I'm interested in the movements actually on the road itself, directly on the road, both in and out, and also in terms of right turning from Barry Marshall into the site and the impact and the traffic movement in that area. Can you talk some comments about that? Obviously, this is a significant, in reading the RAR and the documentation we've got, this is the key issue. The access and the driveway is the key issue. So I'd like you to talk about that in the context of both the site, but more of a conversation around the road itself. And I'm particularly interested in impact on road users and traffic congestion. And obviously there's the final issue of safety.
Yep. So this was basically the focus of the addendum report that we prepared after meeting with both the city and the PTA. And yes, they were both concerned with the operation of this and how it interacted with the signal next to it. As Sean mentioned earlier when he was talking about it, this section of road, it doesn't carry any general traffic. Although at the moment, if you go out there's a whole stack of construction vehicles parked and all the tradies and whatever that are working in the area. But essentially, at the moment, there shouldn't be any general traffic on it at all because the only spot it goes is to the train station. As we talked about earlier, there's the future access road to the south when the car park area is redeveloped as part of that stage 2 concept plan. So it is constructed in the same manner as the entirety of the rest of Barry Marshall Parade. There's a single lane for general traffic. There's a single lane for buses on each side of the median. And that's the way it's proposed to continue. So in the short term, if this development gets up today and gets constructed, we'd be constructing a driveway on a section of road that all traffic would need to travel to and from Fiona Wood and the traffic lights. And hence the proposal to put a break in the existing median so that we can turn right out of the driveway onto Barry Marshall in order to head back towards the rest of the precinct and to get out. We've analysed that, we've taken into account, we actually got traffic counts recently, which shows some general traffic movements on this precinct because of the construction traffic and other stuff that's there. We left that traffic on there, essentially to reflect the fact that there would be general traffic in the future when that other road's built. We took into account the forecasts that PTA gave us in regards to significant increases in the current numbers of buses, which is more than double the numbers that are there right now. So we've factored those into the analyses. And as I said before, we've looked at the absolute peak period that will occur in that future scenario. And all of that shows that, yes, it will operate at acceptable levels of service. The reality is that what we all talk about as being significant numbers of buses ends up being about 70 buses an hour, which is, it's a bus a minute or thereabouts. So although there might be a string of 5 or 6 buses that all come out of the train station at once, there's then the best part of at least a minute, if not several, where there's very little happening. So there's plenty of opportunity for getting in and out of the traffic. And that's the difference between this or further down on Barry Marshall, where there is other general traffic on the road that the buses are interacting with as well. So from a pure traffic operational point of view, there is no issue here. So the only issue then steps back to the impact on the actual flow of the buses. So if we had a single lane of traffic and we were proposing a driveway, if I'm driving down to enter into the driveway, I'm slowing my car down, I'm indicating to turn, I'm potentially stopping if there's pedestrians on the footpath. And in that situation, a bus would have to stop behind me. But in this situation, there's an additional lane. And the buses are coming through and they can be in either lane, even though the left lane is painted as the bus lane. A lot of the buses that come through that intersection right now are actually in the central lane. And the reason for that is because at the traffic lights, all of the general traffic that's heading eastbound on Barry Marshall is all turning left into Fiona Wood Road to get to South Street. And so they're all in the left lane and potentially, and quite often there's a queue. The buses simply pull out, sit in the other lane, go through the traffic light and then continue back into the bus lane up into the train station. So it's already happening like that. And we'd argue that the same thing will continue. If a car slows down to turn into this access driveway, the bus can go around it and continue through. And there's no other traffic that it has to worry about. It's not like St George's Terrace where they're stuck because the other lane's full of traffic. There's no other traffic in here. In the future, there will be some, but it's only going to be small amounts of traffic still. We've shown driveways a design for the modifications in the reports that we prepared. So we've actually shown a concept for how we would modify the driveway. One of the concerns that was raised about in the future, it may be in the future that there's a preference to not have this median opening that we're proposing as a short term. Once that other road is built further to the east, the one that was mentioned, I think, Murdoch Boulevard, I think it's talked about. Once that's built, this access that we're proposing could potentially have the median closed again and make it a left in, left out access for that long term, because traffic exiting this site would then be able to turn left, turn right into that future road and travel out through that part of the precinct. So that's always a potential. We don't believe it needs to happen, but it is a potential if there's a reason or a preference for that to occur in the future. But right now, for this development to occur now, that median opening has to be provided to enable traffic to get back out.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this junction? If there are no other questions, thank you. We will now go to officers of the city. Would officers like to make some comments about the RA and about anything you've heard today? I'll hand over to yourselves.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
On mute.
Are you able to hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. We
do have a presentation to sort of go through the RER and the main issue about vehicle access. If you want us to sort of present that and sort of explain what was detailed in the RER.
Thank you.
Let's go bottom, yeah, so, yeah, that one. I would go to window. You're showing the entire screen, so just go down to the, the PowerPoint, yeah, bottom, perfect.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect.
So this is a presentation on obviously the application for mixed use development, 5 Fernwood Road and 55 Barry Marshall Parade in Murdoch. This is the subject site, so it's bounded by Barry Marshall Parade, Fiona Wood Road, and Wonnell Place to the north. So in terms of context, so the application is a mixed-use development comprising, I guess, over 2 sites. The first site being a 24-storey mixed-use development on the corner site of 5 Fiona Wood Road, comprising 216 built-to-rent multiple dwellings, 11 ground floor commercial tenancies, and then above that ground floor, 4 levels of above-ground car parking. Then in addition to that is the site 55 Barry Marshall Parade, which is a 13-storey commercial building comprising ground floor commercial tenancies as well, plus 4 levels of above-ground parking and almost 200 square metres gross floor area of office tenancy space. And then vehicle access for the service vehicles is from Wonnell Place to the north, while access to the parking bays for multiple dwellings and the commercial tenancies is via Barry Marshall Parade. There's some images there showing the context of the development and where it's located in the structure plan. So in regards to the process that took place, so initially there were presentations made to the development WA design review panel end of last year. There was a few initial meetings that took place. There was sort of preliminary support from the DRP, then sort of the lodgement of the DAP took place. As part of those DRP meetings, there was endorsement that was going to occur while the application was being assessed in regards to their design review support for it, which occurred during the assessment of that DAP assessment. During the advertising of the DA, there was obviously the issues about access off Barry Marshall Parade, which there were comments made from PTA in the city in terms of their concerns about that. Advertising as well took place, only a few submissions were received. So then as part of that, the city finalised their final assessment of the application and then the RER, which was now presented to today's meeting. So in regards to the main issue in terms of this application, why the city's recommended deferral is in regards to sort of vehicle access. So under local planning policy 4.4 for these particular sites, access, vehicle and service access is required to be from Wonnell Place only. At the moment, only the service vehicle access is off Wonnell Place, while all other access is off Barry Marshall Parade for the commercial and residential tenancies. The city, along with PTA, as explained by the applicants, have had a few meetings to discuss this arrangement and still do not support the current access arrangement off Barry Marshall Parade, where there were meetings held to try and resolve this issue, which an updated transport report was provided by the applicants, but still wasn't supportable to both agencies. And therefore, the city, as part of this area, has recommended deferral on that basis to address this issue with the Barry Marshall Parade access. So I guess going forward, the outcomes, vehicle access does not meet the city's expectations in regard to the relevant framework at the moment. There's been no demonstration at this stage that access will not work without access to Barry Marshall Parade, nor the safety of the proposed arrangement. So there still are concerns in regards to traffic congestion and safety concerns with this access as proposed, which the city and PTA are not satisfied with. Therefore, the condition to remove Barry Marshall Parade access is not considered sort of appropriate, and therefore deferral to resolve the access issue is considered the most reasonable outcome at this opportunity. I think if we didn't, it would be a precautionary sort of approach. We didn't sort of detail that issue now, rather than sort of let it sort of support about that detail being provided and support from both agencies on that access arrangement that's been proposed. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to say? Or is that the full comment?
I'll just add that we have our road safety engineer available to answer any questions, Kamal, as well as PTA is also available online, I believe. So if there's any additional questions in relation to concerns, our outstanding concerns in relation to the safety of vehicle access to Barry Marshall Parade, we're more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have questions to city officers and or PTA? Yes.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Well, I suppose the fundamental question is shifting the access back to Wonnell, the only option.
So through the chair, our local planning policy stipulates vehicle access from Wonnell Place from not only a vehicle access and safety perspective, but also from an urban sign perspective. We need to prioritise pedestrian movements and also public transport movements on Barry Marshall Parade based on the information that we have. We don't have, our position is that we do not have enough information from the applicants to support that this arrangement is not possible and that the Barry Marshall Parade access is the only option to provide safe and appropriate vehicle access for this development. So without that information, we have recommended deferral because the quality of the design and the nature of the development is not our concern. As you can see by the content of the RAR, it is that we just don't have enough information to be in a position to support it on a precautionary approach principle.
So the question was, is shifting it back to Wonnell the only option? Maybe it's not, but it seems as though Mr. Yuloff has given a pretty thorough assessment of this, and I think it was also supported by another traffic engineer for another project, that the basic principles of or concerns of using Wonnell. I don't know what more information, if this is to be deferred, what more information is required. I also note that the public PTA is seeking additional information, which apparently hasn't been received at the time. So they're not, well, if I read it correctly, they're not totally conclusive in their response at this stage. So can you understand the position we're in here? I'm struggling to see what more they can do other than shifting the access to find their way to an approval, even if, in the event that it is deferred.
Yeah, sure, Chair. To begin with, this infrastructure has been designed by PTA, which is involved and public authority and work, what do you call it, land court. And the sign that indicates there is a regulatory sign which stating there's no authorized vehicles, which is controlled by main road. There hasn't been any discussion with main road. Perhaps there has been discussion with PTA, yes, but not with main road, whether that sign needs to be removed or not. The city has no authority to remove that sign to authorize any access vehicles other than the one that's been authorized, which is high frequency bus through that area. Secondly, there hasn't been any, as part of the safety audit, that's part of the condition. The road safety audit doesn't mean that any design has to be altered completely, but it means that the design probably needs to be looked at from the safety point of view, which means specialized people looking at the safety, road safety will need to look into it. Secondly, the trip distribution, we request a review of trip distribution of vehicles, or probably a reduction of the parking areas of this development to reduce the trip generation. And those further information that we need to look at, whether there has been any communication with Mayor Road or not at this point. If that has been, if this development goes through, who would be authorized to remove that sign? Because the city has no any authority to remove any or install any regulatory sign on this area. And this access clearly controlled by a regulatory sign, which says no no access to unauthorized vehicles.
So just to reiterate and add to that, there's two state government agencies that aren't satisfied or have granted the necessary permissions to obtain access from Barry Marshall Parade. We do not have enough support from those agencies to consider it favourably. So it's not just the cities, it's also, you know, state government agencies' perspectives on the safety and appropriateness of the access in this particular location.
Yeah, I mean, the PTA, we take that into their views into consideration, but you're saying the main roads, they have control over a critical component of this proposal, in that they need to approve a removal of a sign. So they can, PTA is for consideration. Main roads have got independent approval rights that could prevent this access arrangement being put in place the way it's proposed. That's what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. The main road has got that authority to control the sign. So based on all as initial design of this infrastructure, when the study was done, it was in 2014, the city basically inherited or handed over to the city to basically manage this infrastructure. And that's how it was. We have been managing, and based on those design or those principles, those signs have been installed for this area to be solely for bus only. If we open up this to all the traffic, then what is that the impact of this has to be clearly studied and analyzed, and what sort of control measure will be done if we allow, we open up for vehicles, any other vehicles to go through that.
So just on that point, the concern about allowing other vehicles to go through, could you just clarify? I thought we just heard earlier on, and that we've had material on it, that Barry Marshall Parade is a public road. What do you say the status of the road is?
It's a public road.
Okay.
For
Does the public road, the public road therefore would allow both bus and the other vehicles on that section of the road that we're talking about?
If there is no sign to state that other vehicles are not authorized, in this case, it's clearly the sign.
Through the chair,
So is the concern that the sign is there is the concern? Because I'm hearing that the road is a public road which can be used by both bus and other vehicles, PTA vehicles and other vehicles, but because of the sign, it causes a concern for the city's consideration. Is the sign the issue? Or have I said too much?
It's not the concern. What we said is we are not authorized to remove that sign.
I can understand that. I understand you're authorised, yeah.
But we're not, so through the chair, we're not authorised to permit, just to clarify, we're not authorised to permit vehicle movements from the sort of general public. That's not our call to make. I believe that in order to remove the sign, the main roads would need to consider if it's appropriate to allow for other vehicles to access that particular road. So we're not able to make that particular judgment call at this stage, and that judgment call, believe it lays with main roads.
Okay, so as I understand on the plans, just sorry to get, I'm sorry to drill right down onto this. So on the left-hand side is the bus lane. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. On the right-hand side, right lane, is open road for general public.
Yes.
So in theory, what I think I'm hearing is I can't drive on the left side, on the left lane, but I could drive on the right lane and turn left across the bus lane into a facility, safe to do. Currently, as a result of signage. If there was a crossover there. I'm just trying to get my clarity of what you're saying to me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but as I'm understanding, I could drive down the right-hand lane, but not the left-hand lane, and there's no legal impediment turning across a bus lane.
You can drive on the left-hand section, the left-hand lane, not the right.
Is that, the issue is the access to the area itself. It's not about driving on one particular lane.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get around.
Francesca, there is PTA on. Did you want to?
Yeah, PTA can provide that comment. Yes, thank you.
All right then.
I'm trying to drill down as to what is the
Can I ask a follow-up question on this, which might actually break it up a bit? What happens in the future when stage 2 is built, when you've got a public road, which you've called Murdoch Boulevard, I think, coming into the northwest of this site? What happens then?
Sorry, just through the chair, I believe the PTA is, oh, there, perfect.
Yay. Sorry, I've been trying to talk and answer questions the whole time. Sorry. Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So the issue is that section of Barry Marshall is not open to the public. It is not a public road. The issue is that there will not be a right-hand turn possible into the potential Murdoch Boulevard drive up ahead. It is indicated as a left-only out, and that is very clear on the structure plan that has been approved. So the assumption that the applicant has made that a right-hand turn will be able to occur up higher, so further east up Barry Marshall, is an assumption. It's a gross assumption. We have not seen the traffic modelling, let's say at a fail point, if there is a roundabout included at the Wannell Place and Fiona Wood intersection, and we've asked for that to prove to us that South Street will actually fatally floor, as has been indicated. The speaker there from the RSA from the city of Melville is correct in that sign, they have no jurisdiction over the removal of that sign. So currently it's a left only up into Barry Marshall for buses only. The other problem is the right-hand egress from the proponent's development onto Barry Marshall over that crossover we do not deem as being safe, in that the buses will be going over there. At the moment it's 90 like once every minute. But the traffic then banking internally inside of the development, we believe, will be significant. And while that is the proponent's issue to resolve, we believe that risk-taking behaviour starts to happen when people become impatient. So we are concerned of the conflict between the private vehicle use turning right out of their driveway onto Barry Marshall. We do not believe that there is enough of a distance between the intersection traffic light signalling to the banking back on that right-hand turn. And let's not forget the fact that this is designed to be a mid-tier and rapid transit route. So while we support the proposed development in the TOD and the wonderful things that it will provide for social and low-cost housing, the fact that the egress is on the Barry Marshall Parade is, it's not supported, and it has a significant impact, the proposed design, which we agree with. If it's approved in its current form, it would severely impact the current public transport operations in the precinct. It would create, we think, significant risk to vehicles exiting, so their own proponents' vehicles, as well as likely preclude any future mid-tier public transport network between Fremantle and Murdoch. The road itself, we don't believe will be wide enough in its current state anyway to be able to comfortably have any sort of private vehicle on that section if rapid transit or the mid-tier route comes up. So they are our concerns. I can take questions.
Can I just ask, you've said you believe certain things. We've had a traffic engineer who's a traffic engineer saying, disputing this. What is the background to your belief? Has this been subject to technical analysis, or is it just your?
No, sorry. I shouldn't say belief. I should say the information that we've had from our from Flight, who's our traffic modeller who has looked at the results, and also we've conferred with the City of Melville on this one and their RSA. So we have key questions such as what level of activity or development is assumed around the bus interchange, because none of that was evident in the traffic modelling. Did they assume that the existing park and ride remains as is? What year have they forecast to? How much was the background traffic grown to establish the forecast year traffic? How many other buildings in the master plan are operating in the forecast year? None of this is evident in the traffic modelling. How much parking trips do these generate? We also want to know the assumptions around what the fatally flawed point was if there was a roundabout in Wannell Place, because that was not demonstrated in the traffic modelling. And then discussions back with Main Roads as regards to how any banking around that roundabout would have been affected onto South Street, which of course is Main Roads jurisdiction. We were asking for Hesperia to provide supporting evidence of their trip generation rates and parking requirements. Where else? So no, sorry, I shouldn't have said belief. I should have said in terms of our assessment of their report, and also in conference with the RSA from City of Melville.
So your concerns are beyond just the public transport, because you talked about impact on South Street of a roundabout and so forth.
Correct. They've stated that the roundabout going at the intersection of Wannell Place and Fiona Wood will cause an issue back to South Street, which we need to have proven, and we have not seen that evidenced.
I understand that, but even let's say it is proven, that means they've got no option, because they can't have access to Barry Marshall because it'll disrupt public transport, and they can't have access from Wannell because it'll disrupt South Street.
So the proponent themselves has said that only 15% will be going left down that way anyway.
I know. It sounds like we could be at a stalemate here where there's nothing. They can't make this site work.
I think they could make the site work if the roundabout's in place. We have not had evidence from them for us to say that it won't work.
Well, they haven't. I don't think they've made it up. I think they have analysed it, and I think another traffic consultant also came to the same conclusion. Anyway, I'll leave that. I think I'd like some response from Mr. Uloth, if we can at some point. I mean, this is the basis of the whole.
You can ask a question now, direct to them. We can have both groups all conversate.
Well, there's been a number of matters raised in relation to your analysis. I mean, one, for example, is the trip generation from your site, as I understand it, and that was, I think, done with an addendum to your original report. The question of the roundabout, and also I suppose and we have heard from you, but is there anything you can add? And the impact on the strategic public transport route that we're talking about.
And also, because it's a bit of a side issue, really, the process for shifting that sign further back. I mean,
yeah. I mean, look, I'll perhaps start there. That was the first thing that was raised, in that, yes, obviously the sign is there at the moment because it should only be buses proceeding past that point at the moment, because there's nowhere else to go other than into the bus station. So the sign's placed in the right position at the moment. My view on it is that if this development goes ahead, Main Roads will be asked to comment on the design of the median opening, because it's part of the signalised intersection. Relocation of signs would be part of that approval process as part of the detailed design. And yes, in this scenario, the sign would need to be shifted down because
that's a Main Roads decision?
Well, it's a Main Roads decision because it's a traffic signal. And so Main Roads would have to comment on modifications to.
So as far as Main Roads is concerned, the issue is distance to the traffic signal. That's something that they routinely look at.
Yep, and the plans that we've put forward are modifying the existing turn pocket for the signalised intersection. So there would be commentary around that from them as part of that approval, and the sign would form part of that.
Have you spoken to them yet?
No, we haven't spoken to them, and neither have they been raised before today.
But if your proposal requires a modification,
yeah, it would be part of a condition that approval of that would be subject to comments from Main Roads. That's my view on it.
But it looks to me that distance driveway to traffic signal is a fairly standard one. It's it's not close, is it?
Oh, look, it's far enough away. Again, we're not talking about a highly trafficked piece of road. And so, yes, and the buses don't turn right at that location. So you raise the question, who's it there for? So there's things like that. And look, ideally, we would perhaps move the thing further up, but we've got a certain site frontage. And hence my comments earlier that if in the future there were concerns, that median opening could be closed if necessary once that other road has been built. Now, the comments about the, again, if I come back to the structure plan, and I think I raised that at the start, the structure plan does show this piece of road as a public road up to that other point. There was a comment there about the other road being a left turn out only. I don't know where that's progressed, but certainly to me, it makes sense that we're in a precinct that we know is being designed as a congested area. We should be allowing traffic to go as many routes as it possibly can and access the different areas. So whenever that stage 2 development occurs, obviously it makes sense to allow access from multiple locations if that's possible.
But that's a future consideration.
It's a future issue, but the structure plan clearly shows this piece of Barry Marshall as being a general access road, and it shows the bus only area beyond that other intersection. So that's sort of where we've come from as opening up that it's an opportunity there. In regards to the analyses we've done, it's right, the report that we've produced doesn't actually show a fail point of the roundabout. What it does show is that access coming out of Wannell Place will actually cause a fail of the traffic signal. And it'll create significantly bigger delays for the buses because, as I mentioned, all the traffic coming out onto Wannell Place would have to turn left down to the traffic signal. More green time would have to be allocated to Fiona Wood Road, and therefore longer delays for Barry Marshall Parade. So to put all the traffic back and have it all accessing Fiona Wood actually creates more delays for the buses, where if they come out the other way, they're in that stream of buses running through Barry.
And your analysis is specific about that, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it goes down to loss E or something like that.
At the traffic signal, I think it even gets to an F under that scenario, where it's at a level of service D under the proposed scenario. The other comment that was made was about queuing internally. Now, we've analysed that. We analysed it on request from the city and PTA. The data that's in there shows a queue. I think it's a maximum of 29 metres within the driveway in that critical 15-minute peak period. So it's a queue of about 5 cars waiting to get out at that critical point. We've designed all the internals to make sure that there's no issues. This type of development, sometimes the concern is actually the entering traffic. If you've got some sort of access control, boom gate or something like that. In this scenario, because of the issues that were raised, all of that is at the top of the ramp, miles away from the footpath, basically, so that if there was any internal queuing or delay with a swipe card or whatever, that we're not backing back up across the footpath or back out into that bus lane. It's all happening internally. So we've addressed all of those issues that have been raised. In regards to the modelling itself and the analysis, as I said, the area has been modelled, in its entirety in regards to all of these things. The discussion we had with the city was that, let's say, and this was before we did the detailed analysis because we were basically arguing we didn't need to do it, but the comment was, well, let's say we come up with something that says that it's not going to work. Which intersection are we upgrading? Everything's been built to its maximum. It's been built based on the whole precinct. It's been built based on long-term modelling that was carried out by the government and thrashed about with all the different changes to the structure plan. We're not changing an intersection based on this particular lot being developed. It is what it is, and we'll have to work with it. And again, it's this hard thing that it is a congested precinct. If it gets too congested, less people will drive. And that, again, my comment about my own driving behaviour. I don't try and get in or out of the city at peak time if I can help it. I leave my car there and I travel later or travel earlier. And that's what happens when you live in that environment. And that's what will happen here. So from an analysis point of view, we put the traffic numbers in, we analyse it, we show results, but we don't expect it to be that bad from the development's perspective. The roads themselves will be congested and should be.
So
could I ask a question?
they're all working hard.
Yes, you can.
Thanks. Look, sorry, I was just wondering, in terms of the, we've heard, different points of view around the main roads, approval required the signage and also the PTA's concerns, which differ from the applicant's point of view. What I'm wondering is, in terms of the deferral recommendation, I'm wondering if there'd be the potential to look at putting that as a condition whereby the applicant has to demonstrate to the city's satisfaction compliance with the local planning policy 4.4 in regards to access off Barry Marshall Parade, because then in the event that the city isn't satisfied, it will have to presumably come back anyway. Is that some way we could move forward? Because I think otherwise we just there's different opinions, and clearly I don't think the parties are going to agree in this meeting.
Okay, so members are entitled to move whatever. Well, the protocols are that the RA recommendation needs to be considered first, whether it's moved, seconded or lost or not even moved at all, but it's got to be dealt with first. Then it goes to an alternative or variation of alternative. More to your specific question about conditions, then a series of conditions can be either added or changed. That's the right of the individual panel members. The planning principle around conditions is they need to be certain and final, and that the question that you're raising would raise the broader question of whether or not a condition would subsequently prevent the development from actually occurring. So certain and final needs to, if you're supporting a development, then the conditions need to reflect the ability of that development to proceed. Allowing a condition that creates, or providing a condition that prevents that, raises that broader legal question about the suitability of a condition. I won't comment on the specific condition, but that's the principle that sits around it.
Could I ask then perhaps for the city officers to comment on whether that could be a condition? As far as I can tell, there's nothing clear to indicate that it would prevent the development occurring at this stage. It's just a matter of demonstrating how it could work, and if it can't work under the current proposal, then there might have to be modifications.
So through the chair, thank you, councillor, for that question. We did contemplate if we could condition something to address this access issue conundrum. However, we're of the belief that if they were going to change the access to address that concern and remove the barrier Marshall Access Parade, it would be a substantive design change, which would require reassessment. And so based on that principle, we weren't able to support a condition, and hence why we've recommended deferral. Because if, for example, they aren't able to demonstrate that the vehicle access is appropriate and can be considered to our satisfaction, the PTA satisfaction and main roads, then they would have to do a design change, which we would need to have a appropriate amount of time to assess and represent the report back to the JDAP. So yeah, we did contemplate that. Unfortunately, weren't able to facilitate.
Yeah, can I
yes
ask a question? And I suppose the fundamental thing in my mind, I'm wondering, and Mr. Levy's just sat down, but
I need another question.
I mean, the way the recommendation is written is compliance with the local planning policy. Firstly, I'll ask the administration, does that mean the local, and you sort of answered it, but I'll ask it again. The planning policy said no access off Barry Marshall, access off Wonnell. Is that what they're saying? Deferring it, amend the plan so that the access is consistent with the local development plan.
Or if it is going to be off Barry Marshall Parade, provide us that detailed justification. Well, we're after what PTA is after to demonstrate that can work as an access arrangement.
Okay, well then my question to is do you think there's more you can do to convince
I think
the relevant authorities? Because I mean, from what I heard from the PTA, it'd take a fair bit of convincing to put any cars onto Barry Marshall. I mean, we're talking, what, 1 bus a minute, and they get exclusive use to a 2-lane road. Does seem public road. But anyway,
And
so the
to add
question
to that, there's no suggestion that the buses are doing high speed either. It's 45 speed zone.
Beside that, so just is it, from what you've heard, do you believe that you can? Is it a worthwhile exercise to defer this and try and convince?
The short answer is no, because to justify any further the access of Barry Marshall, the only way to change what we've done would be for the PTA or their consultant that was mentioned to tell us that the volumes of traffic we've assumed on Barry Marshall Parade are incorrect. Now, they haven't done that. And the reality is they gave us bus numbers. We've used those bus numbers. Their response doesn't say we used them incorrectly. It doesn't say the bus numbers were wrong. The suggestion of do we include this development or that development, there's no other developments apart from stage 2 development on that future road that has access to this piece of road. So it's not like there's missing traffic. You know, we've got a road that's basically buses, a potential future road on that Murdoch Boulevard, and this development if it's approved. That's the only traffic that has access to this piece of road. So what's happening on other lots here, there and everywhere else actually don't impact this. So we've taken what we believe is the worst case scenario based on the information we've been provided. So unless PTA said, no, we've got an alternative set of numbers that we want you to analyse your development with, that's the only way we could do anything more. And they haven't offered that. They haven't suggested that that's the case.
I'll just follow up slightly on that. We talked about congestion, which means all of these roads are working pretty hard. Can you just around about as I recall, Fiona Wood Drive is around about 5,000 or 6,000 vehicles a day?
It's something of that order.
And that will increase over time to?
It'll definitely increase, yes.
Yeah. And Barry Marshall Drive, south of, the main part of it, south of the lights, what does that do?
I'm testing my memory, but
roughly.
Look, it'll be around the 15,000 mark at least,
okay.
But based on it being a single lane.
Barry Marshall Drive in the section we're talking about, what's that?
It carries at the moment a few hundred buses.
You're right. So it's not working very hard.
Not at all.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just get some further comments from?
Oh, sorry, and the buses as they go past those lights, they're in the general traffic stream.
More often than not, they're in the general traffic stream, yes.
So occasionally there's a dedicated bus lane, but occasionally there's not. Is that basically where they go?
At the lights specifically on that western leg, the bus lane has terminated further back because the left lane is a left turn lane to turn into Fiona Wood Road. So there's a left turn lane for general traffic, there's a through lane, which by virtue of the signs is a default bus lane because they're the only vehicles that are permitted under the signage.
I was thinking of bus coming out.
Bus coming out the other way, it's a left side bus lane, it's a black asphalt through lane and a black asphalt right turn lane into Fiona Wood Road.
And then they're in the general traffic.
I'm going through on Fiona Wood, going through on
Fiona Wood Drive.
On Fiona Wood, it's general traffic if they were to turn that way. It's only if they continued on Barry Marshall.
Barry Marshall, there's a
continued bus lane.
All the way down to.
All the way down, yes.
To Murdoch Drive.
Madam Chair, could I please ask if we could have a comment from the PTA in relation to the points that have just been made?
Yes, you can. Over to PTA if you'd like to make some further comments.
Sorry, just trying to unmute there. Is there a specific, which specific part or which specific question?
Well, just in terms of the further information that the applicant said that they could provide, that there wasn't necessarily anything else. I just wonder if you could respond to that.
I think the assumptions weren't that underpinning the model, that we couldn't rely solely on the modelling outputs. We weren't sure from the modelling that was presented what level of activity of or development is assumed about the bus interchange, and also the future bus interchange. So while we gave them the current numbers, the future intention is that this bus interchange is potentially going to be doubled, and then also with the rapid transit and the mid-tier development that's happening in that zone. That's our biggest concern, is that it has been identified as, so it's currently a high frequency bus. It has been identified as a future high order public transport corridor in the state government, other stakeholder planning and policy, and it's also been listed on the priority list of Infrastructure Australia to be a higher order bus route in terms of rapid transit. So that's our large concern there, and it is unlikely that we're going to be having any private vehicles in that zone at all because of that very, very reason. So that they were our biggest concerns, and I don't think the traffic modelling took that into consideration. That was not demonstrated. Coming back to the point about main roads requiring there to be consultation and approval from main roads, I think that will be a significant hurdle that the applicant will need to address as well. So even if it does go as a condition, one of the conditions that we would insist upon would be that main roads approval pending RSA of the current proponent's design. And I'm not sure, honestly, that main roads would get that up on that, to be honest. But you know, we need to have that conversation with them, I think. What was the other section?
I think that was it. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions from the panel with regards to Mr. Yulos' comments?
Well, Mr. Yulos said that he had no response to the information he'd provided on, or any alternatives or views of PTA on what if his figures are wrong, what figures they thought
we were
they might be.
provided. There was mention there about doubling of bus numbers. We were provided with those numbers from PTA, and they're the numbers that have been used.
So you've used doubling bus numbers.
Yeah. It's
So
slightly more than double.
And you talked about mass rapid transit or second order transit, and Mrs. for Anastasia as well. What's the impact of that? I mean, that's a long-term maybe project. I know it's a policy, which is a thing, but I mean, I can't, can you explain what the impact of that would be on this particular part of the road, but also how it then translates into the rest of the general traffic? I mean, it's got to get past the lights, and no matter what the transit is, whether it's a rapid or current bus system or something in the future, it's still going to go past the lights and into the general traffic somehow or other. So what's the difference between one side of the lights and the other, as far as that's concerned?
I think that's a PTA question.
It's a PTA question, I think.
Yeah, so that's not actually part of my portfolio. My colleague has identified. Sorry, but I discussed this with him. So the size of the buses and the infrastructure actually changes when it becomes mid-tier, and it becomes rapid. So the design or the feasibility of using this as it currently stands is currently being looked at, and different scenarios are being workshopped and being worked through with DOT as to how Barry Marshall in its entirety can actually work as a rapid transit and a mid-tier. But it has been listed as a priority order. The Minister for Transport is, we have been directed to consider this as a priority project. So this is currently in play at the moment. Our concern is...
So that concerns Barry Marshall in its entirety?
In that the entire Barry Marshall parade needs to be revisited.
All the way down to Murdoch Drive?
Beg your pardon?
All the way down to Murdoch Drive?
Well, it would have to be anyway. It's all the way down to Fremantle, yes.
So that's, yeah, okay, thank you.
So what happens to all the properties that got access now?
I can't again, so this is in its infancy and looking through optioneering and feasibility, and so the strategy of how this works needs to be looked at in its entirety. But this, yes, it will be affected from Fremantle to Murdoch.
So my view on that, from our perspective, is that there's only two options. The buses either remain in the curbside lanes as they are now, or they get shifted into median lanes.
Median as a,
And there's all sorts of infrastructure
And there's a-
happens, and
there's
at
a-
all of those
trackless
crossing
tram in the
points.
middle or something like that, yeah.
And something has to be done at all the different crossing points, and so whichever way it goes, you know, all those things have to be dealt with. We've assumed at the moment that the curbside lanes remain. That's all we've got to work with. We don't have any other advice, and we've shown in our report how we believe access to that that next road would work with curbside bus lanes running through. Now, whether it's bigger buses, more buses, they take up a lane, and there would be a provision for access. That's what we've assumed, and we've showed how that would work in with this development.
So Anastasia, if I may, we don't know yet what the technology is for that future mid-tier transit. It could be trackless tram, it could be bigger buses, it could be central, a centralised transit lane, or it could be a curbside transit lane. We just don't know that yet. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And my question to Darren, why is can you talk through again the, not just the access, but the turn right out, any of these potential future uses appear to remove a right turn out of them? But we don't have any certainty around any of the other road network, is that correct?
And the only reason we're proposing a right turn out now is because that next road doesn't exist yet.
And what's the certainty around all of, that's what my question is.
Well, the structure planning shows a future road.
It's a structure plan.
Yeah, I know.
And basically we're saying that once that future road gets built, then there'll be an opportunity to close this one and allow traffic to access there.
So that structure plan specifically on page 60, it cites that northern section as a one-way only, with the intention for all vehicles to enter the development WA lot, or that stage 2 lot, from the south. There is no right-hand turn from Barry Marshall. That's intentional to not have to not have private vehicle use going on that road, because the other thing is, inadvertently, if someone doesn't know and they continue up this road, they will end up in the bus interchange. There's nowhere to go.
There's a left-hand turn coming out of the future road into Barry Marshall, though, isn't there?
It is designed to be a one-way out only system. So one way in, one way out through that loop, yes.
So there is intentionally public access to that section of public road that we're talking about of Barry Marshall.
Away from the bus interchange, not inviting people up into the bus interchange.
Correct, yeah, but on that left-hand lane, right-hand lane.
Yeah, so the structure plan map itself talks about the further east section being the bus only section.
Yeah.
And this section is general. I mean, whether that intersection is designed as a left out or a right out, this decision impacts that one as well, vice versa. But it's identified as being a shared road at that point. My personal view, again, as I said earlier, is that we're in an area where there's traffic congestion, big developments happening, lots of stuff. My view is give everybody as much access as possible.
So our view on that is active transport prevails, and we're trying to remove cars. But that's my view.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Could we move on to the recommendation? I'd be keen to move it if we're finished with questions.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
Just one final one. Mr. Levy has said in his modelling and estimates that access from Wonnell could be worse for buses at the as a result of the impact on the signalised intersection at Barry Marshall. Is that correct, what you're saying?
Yeah, so we ran, in the addendum, we ran the alternative, with access out onto Wonnell with the existing road arrangements. So everybody exiting the site would have to turn left onto Fiona Wood to access those traffic lights. And to get that additional traffic through, more green time would have to be allocated to Fiona Wood Road, which takes green time away from Barry Marshall. And the results that are published in that addendum, I think the delays for the through traffic, which the buses are a part of, increased by about 60 or 70% as a result of that. So it's a significant increase in delays. The alternative, of course, is that main roads give priority to the buses and say, well, Fiona Wood Road doesn't matter, but that has other implications.
Anastasia, have you looked at that?
I didn't personally look at that. The traffic modeller indicated that if there was a roundabout at that one place, and it would remove then 15 to 20% of the traffic off that. But that wasn't presented in the report.
We can't fit a proper roundabout in that one place. The road reserve isn't wide enough to fit a standard roundabout in that location. So it would have to be a substandard, which would again need Made Roads approved.
Yeah. Have you have had the conversations with any road changes at that? Are you saying they've not been done at this stage?
No, whichever road configuration we end up with, either our preferred or the alternative, there would need to be a discussion with Made Roads about detailed design and line marking. That's standard for every development that does something near a road. So, you know, we're comfortable that there would be a discussion whichever way, but the roundabout option is not a standard roundabout option. So when, you know, if PTA aren't comfortable that the sign might move, we're equally as uncomfortable about Main Roads being happy about a roundabout that's not the standard size.
And I mean, a side issue, but I was involved in the recent DA on the St John of God side, just opposite this one on the other side of Fiona Wood Road. And one of the comments that came back from Main Roads for that development was concern about queue backs into South Street. And there was no proposed changes, it was just an increase of traffic into St John of God. So they raised that then. I have no doubt they will raise concerns with a roundabout, where it's an actual stop point.
Thank you. Any further questions at this junction?
Can I just ask, sorry, one more.
Yes.
In your opinion, Mr. Levy, if this development, looking at the long-term plans, and you've sort of said it, but the suggestion has been it could be sort of almost fatal to the long-term plans for this is a major strategic public transport route, fast transit and so forth. If we were to approve this, that would severely impair that objective.
Sorry, I've missed if you approve it as it is.
If we were to approve this development today,
yes,
with access onto Barry Marshall, that would severely impair PTA's plans.
I don't think it has any impact on what it potentially does. We've heard about the potential one-way out from this eastern road. With this development, if that eastern road was built as a one-way out onto Barry Marshall only, then for this development it would require the right turn out onto Barry Marshall to remain. Otherwise they'd have nowhere to go. My view is that that eastern road should be a full intersection so that the general traffic can go up to that point, and that from that point further east it can be very clearly bus only, no one-way buses, other way shared, none of that. It would be bus only from that road further east. If in the future there's some grand tram, tracks, light rail, whatever that required that to be a more formal intersection, so be it. If it's trackless buses, things like that, then it could have the right turn in and the left turn out. To me, that's a much better overall solution in that it uses the road space that's there. It allows us to deal with congestion locally. It gives multiple access routes in and out of the site. Perhaps it has a slightly detrimental effect in that context on what could be done for buses, but it's no different to what's occurring at probably hundreds of other locations along that route to Fremantle. And I would argue this one in this precinct, with the way it's been designed, is probably a lot more critical than many of the others.
Okay. Is there any further questions? If there's no further questions, thank you. We now move back to the agenda. There is a recommendation in the RA in accordance with the standing orders. We need to go to the recommendation in the RA first. Is there a mover of the RA recommendation?
So moved.
It is moved, Matthew Woodall. Is there a seconder for the RA recommendation?
I will second it.
It is seconded. Daniel Lim. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you. So, look, I think hopefully we can all agree that this is a high quality development. I think it has a lot of merit in the design. It's a mixed use development. This is what the structure plan envisioned for a site like this. I think it'll provide a great benefit to the area and to the community as well. The range of different uses is going to significantly improve, I think, the offering in that area. So in that sense, I think there's a lot going for it. Clearly, there's an issue or concern around traffic and access. We've heard today, different points of view from the applicant and from the PTA. I think there's still quite a divergence of opinion, to the point that I think it'd be difficult to approve this and be confident that that Main Roads, for instance, would be happy to remove the signage to change the use of Barry Marshall Parade. I think there's a lot of doubt still around that issue. I think the officer or responsible authority report recommendation to defer the item for 60 days is reasonable. It's not an overly long period of time. It will allow the applicant to confer with the city and to look at whether the Barry Marshall Parade access is feasible, and to hopefully reach some kind of compromise or satisfy the PTA and Main Roads if that's possible. If it's not, there's alternative options. One will place potentially a roundabout. I realise the applicant has raised concerns around that as well, but I think there are various options that can be looked at, and hopefully through further traffic data and modelling, there can be some, the best solution can be found, and if need be, the plans can be amended to reflect that. So I just think there's still a lot of doubt around the most appropriate vehicle access, and ideally it needs to be done in a way that works for both the applicant, the PTA and Main Roads and the city. And the city's local planning policy, I think, is quite clear around how we want the road network to work in that area. And so if there's going to be a deviation from that, I think it does need to have sufficient evidence to satisfy those other parties that it will work. So I would recommend that we support the responsible authority report with the deferral to allow for those further discussions and information to take place, and hopefully it then comes back with a solution that satisfies all parties. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. So I think just to echo what Councillor Wood was saying as well, is extremely high quality development, and I commend Hespera and Land Planning, Sean and Jamie for getting to this stage. And without reiterating everything, I think there is still a lot of what I'm seeing is there needs to be more work to be done, because it's just to protect what I'm thinking of my decision is I'm trying to protect all parties as well, because at the moment it feels like this is almost like a planning session where everyone's getting their hands dirty, and we're supposed to have sort of more discussion with the technical experts on the field to actually further this forward, and actually to come up with all considerations and written down and properly processed. And I feel like there's a sense of taking a risk with this development if we don't follow the proper process. There's all these processes in place for a reason, even though, yes, we can sort of assume 2 or 3 steps ahead that, the conclusion will come to probably the same point, but it needs to be done regardless, because we are actually facing the public with this development, and I don't want us to be sort of not considering the process and sort of go ahead with it, even though there's a huge amount of benefit of providing, you know, social housing, economics in the area. I just feel that at the moment, I don't feel comfortable moving forward, and the deferral seems to be a valid response. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Yes, John.
Yeah, look, no, I must start off by saying have always been and continue to be an enthusiastic supporter of anything that PTA does, and I think the mid-tier program is a fantastic one. However, and I must say in history I've done a lot of work with PTA, so I regard them very highly. However, in this case, I think that Mr. Levy has made the case that there is no negative impact or unnecessary negative impact on either the current operations of PTA or any future operations by this development. It's a fairly modest, actually, use of a very big road, one which does a hell of a lot more work further on down Barry Marshall Parade, and anything that we're doing there really pales in the insignificance compared with what the issues are further down in Barry Marshall Parade. Any of the crossovers that are there, and also any of the intersections and so on. I think that I'm very satisfied that Mr. Levy has made the case that this is by far the best solution. I think that he has made the case that the one place solution is not available, and I think quite simply what the effect it does to the intersection is reason enough. Also, I think I take the point that there are risks from whatever Main Road's concerns might be in either way. I think, frankly, the risks for putting a driveway onto Barry Marshall Parade are far less than as far as Main Road is concerned. It's a fairly straightforward matter of some probably fairly minor changes to an intersection and an assessment of a very small number of traffic movements coming out of a driveway easily with a sufficient distance away from a set of lights. I think the comparison with putting a roundabout into what is already a very busy road. I mean, Fionawood currently carries about 5,000-6,000 vehicles a day. That's quite a lot. I think the risks there are much higher. So for all of those reasons, I wouldn't recommend a deferral. I think this is quite approvable, and I would much prefer the alternate recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this motion?
Chair.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, this is extremely difficult. It's been mentioned it's a quality development. It's more than a quality development. It's precisely what the precinct needs. And as we've heard, society, our community, there's a screaming need for it. And here's something that's ready to go, and everyone's happy with it except for this issue. In relation to the deferral, given I don't know, this application has been in the system for a while, and I don't know whether 60 days is how far we're going to get with that, because
Not enough anyway.
Sorry?
It's not enough anyway.
Yeah, so, and I just had a question on that. The RAR said 90 days and the recommendation said 60. Was that a deliberate thing? Not that it's of any great I think it's in the conclusion, if I remember. I read 90 days somewhere. Anyway, look, whether it's 60 or 90, it's not really the issue. I mean, it's very difficult for me sitting here to make a decision on this one way or the other in relation to the traffic matters that have been raised here. But on the other hand, I'm not convinced that a deferral for 60 days is going to get us anywhere short of doing a complete redesign and putting the access on the other street, one of which we've heard is a less desirable option. So having said all that, I have heard what my colleague has said over here, and I won't support the recommendation, and I'll support I'm convinced that whilst I note the PTA's concerns and the city's concerns, I'm satisfied from what I've read in the discussion today that approving this application as proposed will not prove fatal to future plans. It's basically one site with traffic taking access on, so there'll be a small proportion of shared traffic onto that road. So yeah, I'm speaking. It took me a while to get there, but I'm speaking against the motion to defer, and I would support a recommendation to approve with the conditions.
Thank you. I will speak to the item. I won't go over what's already been said. I have some reservations about a single point access onto Barry Marshall Parade as proposed in the applicant's submission. I have some concerns about Warnell Road as well, in terms of how it configures and interacts currently with Fiona Wood Road, which is quite different from some of the other intersection points which allow for movement in both directions. And equally, there are some other developments that can access Warnell Road. So I'm interested in understanding how some of that actually will occur in reality. It appears that on the configuration, for this particular section and this site in particular, that either option, and that is Woodall Road / Fiona Wood Road and Barry Marshall Parade, have complications. There are no easy solutions on either of them for intersecting and movement in that precinct. That being said, I suppose my question then becomes deferral and the implications of both deferral and the implications of the additional information in terms of these streets and the surrounding area. My view is that the proposal is a good proposal on the site. The planning merit stacks up. There are complications for any form of movement and access in that precinct, and that access and maneuvering, I've already indicated, at Fiona would also require some changes. The proposal and the information we've received in relation to Barry Marshall Parade seems reasonable, that there is an access point from Barry Marshall Parade. I'm not convinced on the information that we've received that it will fatally prevent PTA and transport movements occurring in and around the precinct and the broader community. As has been said in this meeting, as well as the supporting documents, some of the high level design issues are just that. They are still in infancy, and there's a lot of work that goes along with those particular high level documents. Those particular concerns are referenced both in the structure plan, which is now some years old, in terms of what the intention is, and they're all of them flag these are big ideas and that they're subject to a significant amount of work to bring to fruition and a significant series of considerations. We've seen that with any of the major road network. I'm also cognizant that while this is a greenfield development, any major transport links in and around this area and out to Fremantle will also connect into the broader existing road network and have a series of challenges along those. My comments are that I don't, in this juncture, support a deferral. I can't see any simple solution that will resolve either to the satisfaction of Fiona Wood Road or Barry Marshall Parade. There are complications on both for traffic movement. The complications
should be leased through Barry Marshall Parade. I accept all of the comments that PTA have said, and I do understand the importance of the rapid transit and the higher order mid-level transit that they are proposing. I can see there are many options that are under discussion and would be under discussion. That is way in the future. And I think on this proposal, the option to get access in for both sites, and we are talking about 2 lots gaining single point access into the site, is appropriate from Barry Marshall Parade based on the specific uniqueness of this site. And I'm not making a judgment decision about any other site on Barry Marshall Parade. It's making specifically on this site and its interaction on both of those streets, which are significant roads. Those are my comments. I don't support a deferral in this junction. I move back to the mover for right of reply and close off debate on the motion.
Look, I think we've covered all the points. I'm happy to just go straight to the vote.
Thank you. We're going to the vote. All those in favour? Against? For the minute taker, it is lost. We move back to the alternate recommendation, which everybody has been provided a copy of. Is there a mover of the alternate? The alternate is moved.
Francesca, I just want to bring up there is no preamble for approval on there, so that will need to be added in. It's just going straight to conditions.
Okay. Yeah. All right, let me, because it doesn't reference any particular plans, does it?
No.
Which is, we've had that issue before. I need to get to the, but we should reference every plan that's determined.
Sorry, I did have it and I was going to share it.
Okay.
Shall I second it now to move it along?
Sorry, seconder?
Yep.
It is seconded. Can we just clarify what the document?
Well, probably you can just, RAR, you just probably change approve, defer to approve.
Yeah, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just bring it up on the screen so everyone can see.
Oh, I got plan numbers. I see. I see. What you're talking about, plan numbers. I just need to get this bigger so I can see the number.
But that's Francesca, if you want to look
Sorry,
at the
Madam
screen.
Chair, I think we started.
Yeah.
Plan number 1 to 9, dated the 4th. I wanted to see on here. Would the mover like to speak to it?
Look, I think I've said most of it. I think it's a fantastic development. It's a very important one. I think it's important it does move forward. Quite apart from that, I think the issues have been fully canvassed. I understand PDA's position. I don't think they're disadvantaged by this at all. I think it is the case that the Stage 2 development concept master plan quite clearly shows that in the future, even with only a left turn out of the future new road, the Murdoch Boulevard, this will be a public road and publicly accessible. And I think for those reasons, I think we can, and I think the traffic issues have been really well addressed by the applicant and I think probably put to bed. So I think it is worthy of approval.
Would the seconder like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, aside from what we've been talking about today, which is the access, there's absolutely no doubt that I think it's eminently approvable, this development. I see the PTA lady has left, but in supporting this, as Mr. Symes says, it's no disrespect to the PTA, the very important job they do. I mean, public transport is a fundamental part of our future, but as I said, on balance, I think I'm convinced that it's not going to have a severe or not going to be fatal to their plans. The only other little comment I want to make is that, and I'm not going to propose an amendment, but clause 36 doesn't seem to be a very sustainable clause to me. I know why it's there, which is a mechanical dryer when we have the weather to dry our clothes. But anyway, I won't move an amendment, but I just wanted to make that little bugbear of mine. So yeah, what did I say? Yeah, condition 36. Sorry, but no. So yeah, I've got nothing further to say. I'll support the motion with the conditions.
Thank you. Are there other speakers on the motion?
I would like to move an amendment, if I may.
Yes.
Madam Chair. So I would like to insert a new condition.
Yes.
That the applicant must demonstrate compliance with local planning policy 4.4 Murdoch Health and Knowledge Precinct to the satisfaction of the city.
Okay, new condition. Could you just read it out again? The applicant.
So that the applicant must demonstrate compliance with local planning policy 4.4 Murdoch Health and Knowledge Precinct to the satisfaction of the city.
Yep. Okay. Is there a seconder for the condition, for the additional condition?
I will second it.
It is seconded. Would the mover like to speak further on the motion, on the condition?
Yes. Yes. So just very briefly, this condition, I believe, will allow the development to still have the approval and proceed, but it will also allow the city to work with the applicant around vehicle access arrangements and ensure that the vehicle access arrangements do work for all parties. I'm confident that, well, we've heard there are various issues with access from both streets, and I agree with that. There seem to be various issues. You know, we're not traffic engineers and not traffic experts, so I think that further work needs to be done as to the arrangement with Barry Marshall Parade, but it does seem like there is the potential for that to work. So if the development is to get approval at this meeting, I think including a condition which allows the city to seek that additional information for the applicant to then also obviously seek the main roads approval for the moving of the sign and whatnot, will allow this to proceed and hopefully result in access from Barry Marshall, if that's the way it is to go, in a way that works for the city and for the applicant as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the item? To the motion, I beg your pardon.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Woodall has said enough.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers on this motion? Yes.
Yes, no, I can't agree with this. We've got a specific plan in front of us. There are aspects of it too, which are counter to the structure plan, specifically the access to Barry Marshall Parade. The issues have been aired. This would only confuse matters. I think it would serve no purpose at all. It'd be a very confusing imposition to put on. I don't know how that would be resolved. I can't agree with this at all.
Any other speakers on this motion?
Chair, I oppose it. I mean, simply, I don't think it's a valid condition. It's ambulatory, and it's almost like saying, yeah, we approve this, but you've got to go through the process again. So I don't think it's sustainable as a valid condition, apart from the fact that we've been through this process in any event. So yeah.
Thank you. I will speak to the condition, the additional condition, which is for the minute to take Amendment 1.
I don't support the amendment. I don't support the amendment pretty much for the same reasons as the deputy presiding members indicated, both condition validity and certainty for development. I think it failed on both those criteria for a valid planning condition because obviously the criticality of today's discussion has been around the access point as the key consideration for the discussion on this proposal. And it seems that most parties that have spoken today, particularly on the panel, have raised commentary around the merits of the design, but bulk of the discussion and concerns have been around the traffic access point, and this will just is inconsistent with those discussions, inconsistent with where the motion is at, in my view, and as I've already said, it raises a significant validity, legal validity questions in relation to that type of condition on this particular proposal. So I don't support in this junction. I move back to the mover for right of reply on Amendment 1, new condition.
Thank you. My view is it is a valid condition. The city and the PTA have indicated that they want to see further information and data to satisfy them as to the access off Barry Marshall Parade. I believe that can be provided and it can still proceed, assuming that data meets the needs and requirements of the city. In terms of the condition itself and the validity, it's quite common to have, as I understand it, conditions which require certain things to be done to the satisfaction of the city. I don't see this as particularly different. In any event, the applicant is always open to challenge a condition that they believe is invalid, and there's a process for that. I don't think we should be limiting ourselves as to conditions when there's a process for challenging conditions if the applicant deems them to be beyond power or beyond scope, and they can go through that process if they so choose. But as I see it, this is a way to allow the development to go ahead, but in a way that is cognizant of the issues and concerns around vehicle access off Barry Marshall Parade. Thank you.
Thank you. The debate has been closed. We are now going to the vote on Amendment 1 for a new condition. All those in favour? Against? It is lost for the minute taker. We move back to the substantive motion. Is there any other speakers on the substantive motion? Everyone's already spoken, have they? I will speak to the substantive motion. As already indicated, the proposal is a positive development in the area. I have focused down on the planning, particularly the planning issues. I'm aware of the structure plan and have reviewed all the structure plan information. That sets a high level documentation. There are a number of things in the structure plan that talk about further and ongoing and additional and separate studies to bring other elements to the fruition. The proposal is uniquely positioned between both Fiona Wood Road, as already indicated, and Barry Marshall Parade, with proximity to other roads that are significant as well, particularly south. And this proposal in particularly is acceptable in terms of its planning framework, but its access is also a complex one. I've already indicated my comments in terms of the access. From my perspective, a Barry Marshall Parade is an appropriate access point. I acknowledge all of the considerations that have been given, and I recognise that the road in itself is appropriate for use. That access off Fiona Wood, or the intersection as it currently consists for access off Fiona Wood, would require modification for the form of development that's occurring in this site, and that also raises a number of other problematic concerns in relation to the functioning of both the roads. Overall, I think the proposal is appropriate, including the access point. I'm supportive of it. Those are my comments. If there are no other speakers on the substantive, I go to the mover for right of reply and close the debate.
Yeah, nothing further, thank you.
Debate's been closed. We are now going to the vote on the substantive. All those in favour? Against? It's carried 3-2 for the minute taker. That is the substantive motion. At this juncture, minute taker, it is 11:37 a.m.
And we are changing membership. Thank you for everyone that's here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can I hear me? Yep. Good morning, everybody. We're just trying to, Councillor Suzanne Migdale's been able to enter the meeting. That's fantastic. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Councillor Michael Dudek, and to Councillor Suzanne Migdale. Councillor Migdale, can you hear us okay on the?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can't see you, but I can hear you. So if we are voting, you'll have to tell me what your vote is at the moment because I can't physically see you.
Okay. Can you see me?
No, I did a few seconds ago. I saw you. That's it. I can see you now. Hello. Thank you. All right. For the minute taker, it is 11:42, and we are commencing Part C. Members, we have all 5 panel members. Could I have a show of hands that you've duly considered all matters before you on the agenda? That is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest on Part C? That is nil for the minute taker. We will now move straight through to item 3.1, the childcare centre, Main Street. And we have one presentation. The presentation is from Ben Carter from Pinnacle Planning, and then we will go to officers at the city. And members, we can have questions at the end of both presentations. So first to Ben Carter, and then we will go to officers and then to panel for question. Ben, I can see you online. Would you like to give your presentation?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Look, we will keep it short. Obviously, we've had a long meeting so far, and this one is reasonably straightforward. The item before you is supported for approval. It is for a high-quality childcare centre redevelopment of the property, which is a much-needed asset class in the community, particularly as we do move to an infill setting and a change in demographics, particularly in areas like Osborne Park. The proposal has gone through a full process, both from a technical perspective and the design review panel, who are fully supportive of the development as amended before you today. Again, the application is fully supported with traffic, landscape, waste and acoustic submissions, confirming the centre is both functional and appropriate from a technical perspective. The buildings on site at the moment are not great and potentially reflective of a lot of the main streetscape of older houses in sort of middle to, I guess, not great condition. And we do say that this development will make a positive contribution to the streetscape, particularly noting the engaging and landscape presentation of the development, both on site and with verge landscaping. We did have one simple change to condition 14, which sought the provision of 6 short stay bays. The plans do have 5 noted on them as per recommendation of approval. And we do note that condition 3 seeks to lock us into essentially proceed with the drawings as recommended. So it will be good to have condition 14 updated so as not to trip us up once we get closer to building permit stage. And other than that, seek the panel to support the application and happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, Ben, do you mean condition 15?
Let me check there, John. Sorry, you're right, 15.
Oh, it's a short stay back.
Thank you. Is that the end of your presentation, Ben?
It is, Madam Presiding Member, thank you.
Thank you. We will go to city officers and then we will go to panel members for questions. City officers, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this proposal? We can't hear.
Thank you to the chair. Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. No, so the city agrees with the applicant. The development generally satisfies the applicable framework of the city's framework. The design is contemporary and the built form is generally consistent with both the existing context and then the future context as well. The childcare premises is appropriate in the locality and will provide an essential service for both the current and future community. Accordingly, the city recommends approval. The city has no objection to the applicant's request to amend condition 15 to set out the 5 short stay parking bays. The intent of the condition was to ensure the 6 bays are not used for staff. The city is satisfied sufficient parking is provided on site with the 5 visitors bays and then 1 as the uprod. So there's 6 in total. So no objection from the city.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions to either applicant or city?
Just had a brief question on solid, you've gone for solid fencing. Is that traffic noise mainly?
Was that to myself?
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. The portion of solid fencing that we've chosen is because it's more of a safety and interaction aspect. There is a bus stop adjacent to this development site on the verge. So it's really just to, I guess, provide more of a lack of interface, if you will, with children in the childcare centre and I guess people at the bus stop for that portion.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this juncture? If there are no further questions from any panel members to either applicant or city officers, we will move to the recommendation. As is the standing orders, we will move to the RA recommendation. Is there a mover of the RA recommendation?
Move, councillor.
Sorry, moved councillor Suzanne Migdale. Is there a seconder for the RA recommendation? It is seconded, councillor Michael Dudek. Would the mover like to speak to the item? You're on silent at the moment.
I de-silented myself and then I think someone silenced me. But anyway, just a few words on this. It is a high quality design, which I am very happy to welcome to the area. It is certainly needed. I like what they've done with the design. I can't see any issues from the perspective of residents. It's really quite a smart design, and I think it'll be very highly utilised. There's no effect on traffic. The amenity is fine. The planting looks good, and I think it's really smart to have shielded the bus stop. That just shows a high degree of foresight. So I'm very happy to support this application.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Nothing further, thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the motion? Yes, John.
This is a good development, needs approval. Can I just move a amendment to condition 15, change the number 6 to 5?
Yeah.
So
seconded.
Thank you. That is amendment 1 for the minute taker, and it's been moved and seconded. And everyone's clear what the change was? It's told from 6 to 5.
Yeah.
Would the mover like to make any other comments?
No, I think it's agreed by the city.
Yeah.
Seconder like to say anything?
No.
Anybody else want to speak on the amendment? There are no speakers on the amendment. I'll put it straight to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously for amendment 1 for the minute taker. We move back to the substantive motion. Mr. Syme, did you still want to speak?
No, nothing.
Is there any other speakers on the motion, on the substantive?
So I'll just
Yes.
briefly speak in favour of the motion. I thought very important uses. I thought we're just about done with these. I don't know how many we've dealt with in the last 10 years or so, but yeah, very important uses and clearly a very approvable development. Couldn't help but notice a little bit like the 100 metres hurdles. You've got a structure plan, a local development plan, local planning policies, and a town planning scheme review, and you manage, the officers and the applicants manage to navigate your way through all of that, and well done, and it was very clear in the report. So supporting the application.
Thank you. I will make some comments on it. I think the proposal is a good proposal. It's supported within the planning framework. Like others, I understand these are important uses. However, I will also comment that it's important that we also look at the planning framework in terms of locational context. This proposal is appropriate in both of those aspects, and accordingly, I'm supportive of the proposal. Those are my comments. There's no other speakers. I move back to the mover for right of reply and close of debate.
Nothing further, thanks.
Thank you. That is debate closed. We are going to the motion, the substantive motion inclusive of amendment 1. All those in favour? Against? No, it's carried unanimously. That concludes, there's no DAP application, no Form 2 DAP applications and no SAT reconsiderations. We're now on to part D, the SAT applications that are current are listed there. I have no comments on them. There is no general business, and accordingly I close the meeting at 11:32 a.m. Sorry, 52, I beg your pardon. I'm closing it before it opens. 11:52.
You too. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Cheers.